We've got a remarkable story today, and remarkable is the word here, a perseverance in the face of great injustice. Joyce Watkins spent decades in prison for a crime she did not commit because of bad science. A former boyfriend, also wrongly convicted, died in prison. According to the Innocence Project, false or misleading forensic evidence is a factor in nearly a quarter of all wrongful convictions in this country. Erin Moriarty is here with this particular story. Erin, this is just heartbreaking on many levels.
But it was an honor to meet Joyce. What happened to Joyce Watkins and her boyfriend, Charlie Dunn, is scary because it could happen to anyone. Hundreds of people have been convicted because of so-called forensic sciences that are later discredited. And as you will see in this case, it's an error that could take years or even a lifetime to correct.
My family is my life. My niece is my nephew. That's my life.
Late on the night of June 26, 1987, Joyce Watkins drove from her home in Tennessee to pick up her great niece, who had been staying with a relative in Kentucky for 2 months. Almost immediately, Watkins could tell something was wrong and took the child in the morning to the emergency room. The 4-year-old, seen here as she was transferred to Vanderbilt Medical Center in Nashville, was suffering from head and vaginal injuries and died a day later. Joyce, did it ever occur to you at that moment that you would be accused of her death?
No.
But they questioned you.
Yes. They asked me what happened to her. I told them I didn't know. I couldn't tell them something that I didn't know because I don't know.
Despite evidence that the child had been injured while in Kentucky, Watkins and her boyfriend Charlie Dunn became suspects after an assistant medical examiner, visually observing the child's bruises, mistakenly determined that she had been injured during the 9 hours she was with the couple.
Everybody just got laser focused on Joyce and Charlie.
Jason Gitchner is a senior attorney with the Tennessee Innocence Project.
It didn't matter that they cooperated with the investigation, that they kept meeting with the police over and over again without a lawyer and saying, we didn't do this. Come take whatever evidence you want.
Watkins and Dunn were both convicted and sent to prison for life.
It took everything away from us. It took us from our families, him from his kids, took us from everything we worked for.
Over the years, they tried and failed to get their convictions overturned. In 2015, while still incarcerated, Charlie Dunn died of throat cancer. Later that year, after 27 years in prison, Watkins was released on parole. What was your mission at that point?
To prove our innocence.
Last summer, the Conviction Review Unit of the Davidson County District Attorney's Office released a report finding that the methods used by the medical examiner have been largely discredited and determined that Joyce Watkins and Charlie Dunn are actually innocent. When you heard at the hearing last December just how wrong her medical evidence was in 1987 and that it was the main evidence against you and Charlie, how did you feel about that?
Broken, real heartbroken. Because it's something that should have never happened. That was when I was incarcerated.
It took 35 years, and the unwavering faith of Joyce Watkins, now 74 years old. But in January of this year, the court finally got it right.
Ms. Watkins, this charge against you is dismissed. And to the family of Charlie Dunn, the charge against Charlie Dunn is dismissed.
It was a happy day. It was a happy day.
But bittersweet, too. You never got to grieve either. You never had time to grieve the loss of Brandy.
No, I haven't. But I'm going to go and visit her grave in a few months.
Both Joyce Watkins and Charlie Dunn lost everything they had. Under Tennessee law, Joyce has to first apply for and then get a pardon from the governor to be eligible for any compensation. And there's likely nothing for the family of Charlie Dunn. I think the real takeaway on this story is the fact that there was too much weight put on one witness, that assistant medical examiner, because they ignored all the evidence that this child had had problems in Kentucky before Joyce and Charlie ever pick them up.
But I'm looking at Joyce, who lost such a big chunk of her life. Charlie, who's no longer with us. Will they reopen the investigation? Because somebody did something to this little girl, and it wasn't them.
I think there is a demand for that, but it has been 35 years, and so, you know, witnesses are gone. I think it could be very, very difficult.
And you told us just before we went on there, she was in the process of adopting a child herself.
I think
so. She lost many things.
She did. You know, she owned her own home and she had savings. But I think what hurts her the most is the fact that she was in the process of adopting a child. She's all about family, and I think that's what weighs on her the most, the biggest loss, and that can't be compensated for.
What was she like, Erin?
Well, I have to.
I'm in awe of her.
The word grace comes to mind every time everyone says that when they meet her. She doesn't appear to have anger. She is just determined. And here's what I loved about her the most, that it wasn't enough for her to be exonerated. Even though Charlie had gone, she insisted he be exonerated as well.
Wow. And you pointed out yesterday, Erin, the killers still at large.
Well, have never been. If someone killed her and
right.
they don't think these injuries are accidental, that person has never been brought to justice. No question.
Tough story.
There
Erin
has to
Moriarty.
be compensation here, though, Erin. That strikes me too. No compensation.
No, well, under the law, she has to get a
Sorry.
pardon first. She has to get a pardon first. And then it's limited to $1 million, which may sound like a lot, but it's not considering all that she lost.
Yeah, it's not. Erin, thank you very much.